And if you do all the talking, then they leave knowing what they know and what you know, and you still leave knowing what you knew when you walked in. So you ain't getting nothing because you're talking all the time. Sometimes nothing is the best thing to say.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
The journey. The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
The journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have a Memphis icon that comes to us from Chicago via Cleveland, and then he came all the way to Memphis. But before we go there, we have a quote, but this time we're going to do it a little differently. I'm going to mention the quote, and then I'm going to ask our guests, what does the quote mean to them? So we have Brother Doctor Franco Taylor. He's a pastor, he's an herbalist, and he's a health evangelist. He's a husband, but he's a father of 9 by the same lady. So listen, without further ado, we have Brother Franco. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing truly, truly wonderful,
Wonderful
sir.
that you've been here.
Yes, sir.
That you here.
Yeah, it's a plum pleasing pleasure.
All right now.
Country boy
So
talking.
listen, we got a quote. And the quote goes like this. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. And that comes from the activist poet Bell Hooks. What does that mean to you, Brother Doctor?
Well, isolation is pretty much what happens to us as a race of people. We live in a city, a huge city, but we live where black folks live. We always know the black side of town. We really don't know what's going on until we get out and meet other folks in other spots of the town. We find out what other races of people are all about, how they live, how they do. And it's our interaction with them that actually helps us to become who we become. But until that, we really know nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the part where we're in isolation?
Yeah, we're in isolation. We just know what we know.
Right.
We don't know what's really going on. We're just a little piece of the puzzle. We got to get out and see the whole puzzle. Then we know where we really fit. Then we find out who we really are.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I'm going to go back to your early days. Where were you born?
I was born in Memphis.
Okay.
And my father got run out of Memphis. White
Oh.
folks ran him out. Okay.
Okay.
And he was a hard nose. He was a pretty tough dude.
Okay.
We left, and when I was 9 months old, we moved to Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay. Do you remember Cleveland at all?
Yeah, because I stayed there until I was 8 years old. My mother had a college education. My father was third grade education. He was a construction worker. He did blocks and bricks.
Right.
Had hands, looked big hands, looked like alligator. They were all cracked up for working in the wintertime up in Cleveland.
Okay.
And, I remember well. We lived in a house, didn't have running water. We took baths in a tin tub in the living room. And my father was a gambler. He was just a rough and tumble drinker, gambler. We even had gambling games.
Any brothers and sisters?
I was an only child. I was the
You're
oldest
the only
and the
child?
youngest. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I just remember he was a tough guy, and with his third grade education, he would get mad at my mother, take stuff out on her, and he'd beat her.
Really?
And he always promised that we were going to have the house next door. It was a lot. He was going to build a house on it, and so he gambled. He was great. He cut crap, as they say.
Right.
And he'd go out and win a couple grand, bring it back, give it to her. Say, I'm going to take this 200 and I'm going to go back and gamble a little more. If I lose this, I'm coming home. But of course, when he lost it, he'd come back, he want the other. And so she would say no, and she would fight to try to keep it. She was a simple woman. She wasn't a fighter, but she would try to hold on to the money.
Right.
And he'd beat her. And one night, I heard her screaming. I ran in the room, ran the kitchen, and she was in the kitchen in her gown, and he was just hitting her. And she was just blood, just shooting out of her face. And that time I just went off. I grabbed a meat cleaver on the wall where all the knives were, and I charged him. And he knocked it out of my hand. He looked down at her. He said, "Look at you. You're turning my son against me." And he jumped up, left the house, and didn't come back for a day or two. And that week, when he came home from work on Friday, we were gone. We got a bus and went to Chicago where her sister was.
Okay.
So that's another change in life.
Right,
9 years, now I'm in Chicago, South Side.
Right.
And only child, I've got cousins, and they're all younger than me. I'm the oldest grandchild, and
Right.
So now I got to learn how to fight.
Okay.
I didn't have to do that in
Well,
the
hold on.
suburbs.
We're gonna
Okay,
get to
go
that
ahead, go
part.
ahead. Yeah.
So when did you get to Memphis? What point did you get to Memphis?
I came back to Memphis after I left Chicago, after 4 years of being in Chicago.
So you about 12, 13?
13.
13 years
13.
old, you came back to Memphis.
Yeah.
Who outside of your family had the biggest impact on young Franco Taylor?
It would have been junior high school teacher here in Memphis, Miss Gossett. She was an arithmetic teacher at Porter Junior High.
Okay.
She was tough.
Okay.
And she said, "Come here, boy. But I see you in that bathroom." What? She was that kind. And she said, "You gonna learn math, boy, because you're gonna have to have it. You're gonna learn English, boy." She was just that kind of teacher.
So what made her stick out amongst all the people that you probably came across?
Because she would come straight at me, look me straight in the eye, and she wouldn't take any foolishness.
Okay.
And I knew that she loved me. I knew that she cared.
Okay.
I could tell because it wasn't, "Well, son," no, she was, "Come here, boy."
Okay.
And so I felt something. I felt that love and that strength because my mother was she was just soft. She
Okay.
just loved her baby,
got
okay?
you.
And so she
I got
spoiled
you.
me.
So let me ask you this. When you were young, who did you dream you would be as an older person?
Actually, a doctor, a pediatrician.
Really?
I wanted to be a pediatrician when I was old enough to spell pediatrician.
Okay, why a pediatrician?
Well, my mother, I found out later, wanted to be one.
Okay.
And she didn't make it because she had a baby and all that.
Right.
And so when I learned how to spell, which I learned how I was reading on a third, fourth grade level, comprehensive level, before I went to school.
Okay.
So she taught me how to read.
Taught
We
you
had
how to read.
we lived out in the suburbs. They had a bookmobile, and we'd get the books, and I'd try to beat her reading, and then
Okay.
she said, "Okay, you beat me. Now, what did you read? What was the story about?" So she made me learn and
Comprehend.
comprehend.
Right.
So I became the spokesman for wherever I was,
Right.
for all my people who couldn't really understand what was being said around them. I
Okay.
became the spokesman, so to speak. Yeah.
How different are you from the person you dreamed you'd be?
Much, much, much different. Because I didn't become a medical doctor, I became what I call an international health evangelist.
Health evangelist.
Health evangelist. Like
What does that mean?
Well, my elder brother, Jesus, was a health evangelist.
Okay.
He spent more time helping the needy, feeding the hungry, dealing with demoniac minds, which we would call schizophrenia today,
Right.
bleeding issues, whatever, raising the dead. He did more of that, and they would say, "Why would a man like you do something like that for someone like me?" And he would say, "Because it is written."
I'm gonna ask you about why you refer to him as your older brother in a second, but we're
Okay.
gonna do that on the second half.
Okay.
But before we leave this half, or this segment, when did you know you was gonna be okay? When in your life could you say, "I can do this. Franco Taylor's gonna be all right"?
When I met Jesus,
Okay. When you met Jesus.
30 years old.
Okay. All right. Last question of the segment. Most brothers really know that moment. But what was that moment that you knew you were a black man?
That I knew that I was a black man.
Hold on for a quick second.
Okay.
Listen, we're going to come right back on the journey when brother Dr. Franco Taylor is going to share with us when he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. We'll be right back in a second. This is The Journey on the Kazukian Network.